repair and sharpening of kitchen knives. What I've got here is a selection of knives. These are good quality kitchen knives with specific use. Going from this end, this is a sushi knife, and that is chisel ground, i.e. it is flat on that surface and it is flat for more than half of that surface, and then it bevels down to a final chisel grind on one side only. That's a specific knife for cutting sushi with, or for cutting up fish into nice slices. There's no end of videos on how to use sushi knives, and the thing is about a sushi knife, because it's chisel ground, you need one that's specific for your dexterity. So for instance, if you're left-handed, you would need a left-handed version. I'm right-handed, so you'll see the bevel is on that side. I'll give you a little bit of a close-up of that. There you go. And there. And on the other side it's flat. Now each of these knife types will need specific sharpening, and going on to this one, it's very difficult to show this on film, but that one is actually a hollow ground. So it is flat over 2/3 of the blade, and then it's hollow ground with a final bevel, equal bevel on the edge, and I will show you that on a diagram, which you can probably see now. Okay, that's that one. This is also a hollow ground. Hollow ground blades are particularly good for slicing, especially slicing very thin. And another thing about most kitchen knives is they tend to be generally thin and flexible, and a lot of the time, particularly when I'm buying such knives, I like to buy stainless steel, but I like to buy a good high carbon stainless steel. That's particularly good for cooking. They differ very greatly from sports knives in the fact that sporting knives and survival knives need to have much thicker blades, but I'll get to that in a minute. So there we are, and that's another hollow ground blade, very good for, that's for prepping vegetables. And this is a general purpose kitchen knife. Again, it's good for just about anything. It's a nice small knife, so ladies and guys with small hands might particularly prefer using that one. This is a chef's knife. I call that a standard chef's knife. That one is a flat grind. So you'll see it starts with a thick spine, and it bevels flat towards the edge, and there's a final blade bevel, equal bevel on the edge, and you'll see that here. That's a stainless steel knife. This is an older knife. I've had this for many years now. This is global, and that's Japanese, again, high carbon stainless steel, and that's again is a flat grind. So that starts with a thick spine, tapers all the way to the edge, and then there's a final equal bevel on the end. Okay, these knives are good for general purpose kitchen use, chopping, slicing, cutting meat, and cutting vegetables, but they're particularly good for preparing meat and for fast chopping. So when you see a chef doing that fast knife work, he's going to be using a knife similar to that most of the time, or that. This knife has had a lot of hammer. those of you who are familiar with these knives will see that the tip's been damaged and that have gone some way to trying to fix that. Apart from this little mark I put on it, I etched onto it. We can go into that at a later video if you're interested. Comments below please. But I put this etch on this, and I put it on that one, but that's kind of wearing away now. That's a very flexible blade, particularly good for slicing things like tomatoes, cucumber, very fine slicing. Again, it is a flat grind, but it's a very narrow blade, very narrow, very flexible. I've had a few problems with this because of knife care. For stainless steel knives, you generally just wash them and put them away, but knives with particularly high carbon content can be very susceptible to pitting caused by acid erosion. The etching, the way we etch initials like that into blades is actually with acid, but on this particular type of knife, where it is extremely high carbon steel, very flexible, you tend to get a bit of pitting, and there's a little bit there where my thumb is. I don't know if you can see it, but there. But that's in a knife that's well over 12 years old. Yeah. So I'm not too disappointed with that. It's served me well for a long time, and it will continue to serve me because it's still functional. But that pit. So generally with knives, high carbon knives, it is important that you don't only wash them and dry them thoroughly, is that you put a thin film of oil on them, and that will protect them. Very thin film of oil. You can put mineral oil on, but be careful, it needs to be washed before it's used. So I tend to use, most of the time I tend to use cooking oil. The only trouble with a lot of cooking oils is it gets slightly sticky if it's left for any time. But the good news of cooking oil is it's not going to poison you in any way. I brought, this isn't a cooking knife, this is actually a Mora, and it's a field knife. But that is a high carbon blade, and high carbon blades discolour over time and with use, and you get ever such slight pitting, and that's because you take it into the field, you'll use it to cut things, and you don't get a chance to clean it straight away, and then you end up with something like this. This is a rather interesting grind. We call that a Scandi grind, a Scandinavian grind. And that is where the blade is flat for most of the surface of the blade, and then you get a loss along the last about 1/5 of the blade, is you get a taper which goes direct to the edge, so there's no third bevel on that. It just, that long taper to the edge, and coupled with this excellent steel that this knife is made of, you've got a fiercely sharp blade, and these will not break the bank. I believe I paid in about 2012, I think I paid something like ridiculously low price. I know it was under £15, and this is a Mora knife of Sweden. So if you want an excellent knife that isn't going to break the bank, that is going to do everything you ask it to, it's tough. I've split logs with this thing. There's so many things I've done with this knife, and it is really good quality, really super steel for very little price. However, you have to look after a blade like this. You have to clean it, wash it, dry it thoroughly, and oil it. Very important. Alright, that's my knives. Now, many of you will be used to using economy kitchen knives. Most of you will have had them bought for you in sets, or you'll have bought them in sets from inexpensive, probably attracted by the price. And there are I've got two types on show here. That's a cheap kitchen chef's cum carving knife, and that is just a standard flat bevel edge blade. That is more of a Scandi Grind, however it is actually slightly hollow ground, but again it's not a very good blade at all. It's poorly attached to the hand, the tang is poorly attached to the handle scale, and in this case it's just a bonded plastic, fairly cheap, inexpensive knife. I won't go into the care of these, but because these are wash and wear, and when you're done with them, when they get damaged, you throw them away because they've got very low value. However, it will do in a pinch, and when we go camping or anything like that, we'll take something like this along because we can afford to lose it. I personally don't like using them at all. There you go. So that's those. Now we need to go on to the sharpening of knives. Now I've got a little field sharpener that I use for my Mora, and that's my sheath that goes with it, and there's a little Gerber field sharpener I use. It's got a coarse side and it's got a fine side, so you go swipe it a couple of times along the coarse side. Let me put my glasses on then I can see it. So we go along the coarse side and literally just pull it a couple of times along there, and pull it a couple of times along that side, and this is a fiercely sharp knife. That is scary sharp. Alright, again, but you won't get that kind of sharp on a stainless steel blade. You just cannot get it. You have to have carbon steel blades to get that level of sharpness. That's razor blade sharpness, and along with the high carbon steel, you need to give it the care and diligence due to a carbon steel blade that I've already described. So let's get that out of the way. Right, for general sharpening, most people will use a steel, and it's something like that, and it's very hard steel, and it's striated along its length, and it gives you the opportunity to hold your blade, lift it slightly at an angle, and then cut as if you're taking slices off it like that. Do it fairly slowly, each side of it. Try to keep it even. And a steel, it's often called a sharpening steel, but it is not for sharpening. The only thing a steel is good for is honing a blade. Now, when you, I'll show you a little diagram right now, and what happens is over time the edge of your blade starts to curl over ever so slightly, and what happens when you take your knife and you run it along, that literally just straightens out that that dog ear sort of turnover that you get. So it's not sharpening it, it is merely honing it. It is really just honing it. So for sharpening it, we need to grind it. Now, there are lots of systems for grinding, but the one I find the most useful is to use a twin surfaced grinding stone. We call it a stone. This is an abrasive stone. I used the EzeLap system, and the one I use is the one on one side. It has a medium 400 grit. That's for the grinding. Yeah. And then the other side I've got a 1200 grit, which I use for fine sharpening. The other system I use is the Lansky system, Lansky, And the Lansky system is an excellent system, but it's really more for professionals. If you are interested in the Lansky system, you can look that up, Lansky, Lansky. Alright, look that up and then you'll learn how to use it. I'll quickly show you how to set it up and use it. So let's get that going. And we put it in about halfway down the blade, and then we tighten that up. It's very hard to show you this one-handed, but that will do. And I'll just put that there. And in the case of this one, then you feed that into there like that, and then you take your blade. Now, the way the Lansky system works is you've got sharpening stones to which you attach the rat tail, and the rat tail feeds into one of these slots. Depending on the angle you want on your edge, it will feed into one of those slots, and you'll move back towards the blade. And as with my other grindstone, we have various grits. So you start with the black one is the low grit, and this one is the fine hone-in ceramic. And I don't need to tell you, boys and girls, that professionals use this in their workshops to make top quality knives and sharpen them and have them ready for the customers. So if you want a professional system, learn how to use the Lansky system. And I think this one rushed me around about £40, but it's worth every penny in my book. I very seldom use it these days. So there you have it, that's the Lansky system. Alright, what I have here is a piece of non-slip. It's a plastic non-slip matting, and to sharpen a knife, the first thing I will do is I'll put my stone, sometimes I put it at an angle, it depends on which knife I'm going to use. I put it at a slight angle for these knives usually, and I have it with the medium or the 400 grit facing upwards. So this is for the first part of the grind. The first part of the grind, of course, is to take off the round edges and turn it into a sharp knife, and then the second or fine grit is used to hone it super sharp. For normal kitchen use, you can probably get away with just using a 400 grit. If you want it super sharp, have a 1200 grit as well. So the way to do this, and this is with a hollow ground blade and flat ground blades, the method of sharpening is pretty much the same. If you buy a good quality knife, the chances are that somewhere in the packaging for that knife it will tell you what the best angle is for sharpening it. Now if you want to get the angle absolutely perfect, then you need the Lansky system or a similar system, but I'm very experienced and I'm used to doing this myself. So what I do is I lay the blade down flat, and then I bring it up ever so slightly. Now in order to do that, I need to get the clearance for my knuckles on the edge, so I generally do it at the edge. So put it down flat, lift it ever so slightly, and then you'll see right at the point here is that it's engaging entirely along its length with the surface of the grindstone. And then all you do is you pull it forward as if you're cutting slices off the grindstone, as if you're trying to cut slices off it. Alright, you want about 3 or 4 sweeps like that, and then you reverse it and you take it the other way. Put it down, lift it up slightly, and cut as if you're slicing. Now keep the count right. because otherwise you'll end up with a wonky blade. So if you do 4 that way, do 4 that way, and vice versa. Alright, once you've got to that, you've got a fairly sharp knife for everyday use. If you're sharpening multiple knives, do them all before you change over, and then that will save you time. So I'm going to do the same with that one now. Place it down, lift it up slightly, cut 4 slices off it. And this is a diamond abrasive, so it's really quick and efficient at grinding. Don't grind on wheels because it distempers the blade. If you're sharpening a knife on a grind stone, on a bench grinder, throw your knives away. You've already ruined them. All right, because the heat transfers direct to the edge of the blade, and it will distemper the blade. It will detemper the blade. So that's that one done, both sides. Now remember what we said about the chisel ground blade. You only sharpen it on the one side. This side is kept flat. So again, on this particular one, I need to quickly check that one and make sure it gets to the angle where, there you go. So now I'm looking at the right angle. I draw that along the length as if I'm cutting a slice, as if I'm skinning a fish. And it doesn't matter how many you do on that because you're only doing the one side. I test the edge. Be very careful if you do this. Be careful not to cut yourself. And that one is done. Now I flip it over and I simply repeat that process on the fine grit. Now, as I do that, I pinch the edge of the blade and pull to remove the burr. There is a way you can do it by slapping it off, but I don't want to. It can be done, and those of you who are joiners and carpenters will know that's the way you do your chisels and your plane blades. But another way is to draw it against your skin and pull it away so you don't cut yourself. But do be careful doing those techniques. Alright, but the quickest way is to take your fingers and pinch and pull along like that. So if there is any burr on the blade, you take it off that way. And I don't need to tell you how sharp that is. That is wicked sharp. And that's as sharp as you're ever going to get a stainless steel blade. And now for my sushi knife. Get the angle right, check it, and then slice. I'm just going to do 3 on that one, because if you can see the edge, it's not sharp enough. If you can't see the edge, it's sharp. There you go, super sharp. And finally, my Wasabi stainless steel Kai Wasabi stainless steel. These are you get these knives from Kershaw. They're excellent quality. They're not going to break the bank in terms of price, and a knife like this will last you for years and years and years. So I highly recommend Kai Wasabi knives. They are superb. Really sharp. I didn't cut myself, it's just sharp. Very sharp indeed. So there you have it. You'll see the system I use. Other systems include using an oil stone in which those of you familiar with this system, and it's basically a ceramic stone very similar to that in size and length, and you dress it with oil as you sharpen it. And the same with the Lansky system. With the Lansky system, you use the honing oil that was in that little bottle that you saw. But on this system, I don't use oil at all. You can actually wash these as well. Just run them under the tap, wash them and dry them. So if you are going to get serious about your knife sharpening, I highly recommend EzeLap. And I'll see if I can put you a link to that on Amazon UK, and if I can find one, I'll send you the link to Amazon USA for the same 400/1200 grit EzeLap. So there you are. That's care and maintenance of your kitchen knives. So happy cooking.